Well, hello, Mavericks. Currency recap time. Joe with you. It's Thursday, the 9th of December. You guys know the drill. Let's jump into it. I'm going to get my 2 cents out there, see if we can't find some meaningful news of the day, look at things technically, share some setups. As always, the community. Let's go.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
As we move into the market analysis, folks, you'll see not a lot moved on the S&P because the U.S. equity markets were closed today in honor of President Jimmy Carter's passing. So I would expect, all right, well, let's take a look at what the currency markets do. And we just saw a little bit of consolidation across the majority of the currencies. Not a lot of movement, still a little bit of strength in the yen, and that pound still showing some weakness, but not really breaking out or down or all over the place. It didn't really change much from what we had seen yesterday. So let's just straight up get into our totals. The biggest move was a 0.34%, just over 0.25% to the upside on the yen. And even then, folks, it was more of just kind of a continuation, or I should say a move higher off of a pullback. Didn't really create any sort of opportunities. But take a look at the franc. Take a look at the Aussie, right? Or excuse me, the Kiwi. Look at that. That is 0.00. CAD 0.06. So the pound continued a little lower and the yen continued to kind of float a little higher. But look at that. Everything else is pretty much flat. So it didn't really change much when it came to the outlook that Ankit had with us yesterday. I kind of agree with that. It really hasn't changed. There's the SPX, 0. It wasn't open today. World index up a smidge. Crypto, gold, oil. Crypto's had a pretty decent sell-off since that last surge up over 110. Trying to get to the 100K. It got there. And this is pretty much the third day I've seen these things slide. They bounce hard and then they roll over. We'll take a look at them here. Oil up 1% and gold pretty much flat. Here's the cryptos. Now, Litecoin up a little bit, and it's actually kind of the strongest. It's more of a consolidation, but it's still at a lower level. The other three are definitely rolling lower, kind of a -2, -3 outlook. So how do we finish in the markets? Well, the same as yesterday. I just pretty much took the same slide that I was talking about. I agree with everything here that we got the 50 MA and the 2050 slope. The market, I kind of put it as yellow because it was retesting that. Let's just jump straight into it. But you could see we've got this consolidation going on, and I'm not sure if this is going to be some sort of a symmetrical triangle pattern. Consolidation. It really looks like it wants to here. Very important level that it's kind of setting itself at. Now this could change completely tomorrow, right? We had the markets closed today. We'll see if anything changes sentiment-wise. We did have some Fed speak. We are seeing some of the Fed speak come out as, things are in line. Things are looking pretty good. We don't want to be too hasty in cutting rates. So we'll see if that has any effect. We also do have employment numbers, not only on the U.S., but on the Canadian dollar as well. So we'll see if this continues. I really can't. Obviously, we didn't get a day to really do anything with it, but it's just kind of sitting kind of sideways for now. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see it was pretty light today. Some of the things that we're looking at have already passed. This is what I'm focusing on. We've got the unemployment rate and the unemployment change for the CAD. We also have the non-farm employment and the unemployment rate as well. Now, the U.S. has been showing a lot of strength lately. The unemployment claims were lower than expected, but the the ADP non-farm exchange was actually a little lighter. So the private sector is not really looking to add jobs at a fast pace. However, take a look at this unemployment level. I mean, we're not losing or quitting jobs either. So nice stable economy in the U.S. We'll see what happens with these numbers. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some sort of a reaction, but we'll also see what happens with the CAD. Outside of that, folks, that's pretty much all we've got. Let's get into a quick currency analysis and kind of break these down one by one. As you'll see, there's little change in most of them. As always, folks, let's start off with with the yen. Here's the yen on our velocity score chart, our 4-hour chart. You could see basically right around this area. This is the end of the 8th, right where Ankit was talking about it. Kept this thing pretty much at a +1. I got a little bit of a move to the upside and then back down, but it didn't really do much to the SARS. It didn't do anything really to the RSI or the moving average. So I'm just going to keep that at a +1 that we had yesterday. And the majority of it is let's just not make anything out of anything that's not there. This little move up and down where we finish here versus where we talked about it there, it's absolutely sideways. So I'm just going to keep it where it's at. US dollar, pretty much flat, right? 0.16%. It's just this high base. There's a couple of trades that I like against the US pair that I'll share with you folks that I've got on my watch list. Because I'm definitely favoring the US still going into this situation. I'm going into the mid part of January here. We'll see what happens with the reports tomorrow and see if that has any effect, but it is still definitely one of the stronger currencies. I'm definitely keeping this at a +2. There's no change. This is where we talked about it yesterday. Here we are today. Moving over to the franc, it's also consolidating. This is kind of a zero move for me. We gave it a +1 just because it's showing a little bit more stability above that last bounce with the SAR flip, but sideways right around the 50 on the RSI, a flattening moving average, and it's a pretty good neutral trade. It could be actually paired. In fact, I'm pairing this with the US dollar for one of my trades because if it can stay sideways or even get weak and the US dollar stays where it's at and moves a little higher, it's a nice little high base breakout here. I'll show you in a minute. Now, the euro looks like it's consolidating, is definitely stronger than what we've seen in the pound. The pound looks a little bit weaker. I usually correlate the two together, but this is a zero trade right here. It's looking pretty flat. I'm going to keep it at a +1. That's where we had it yesterday. You can see it's just gone dead sideways since, but it's very similar to the franc in what I've seen lately. Here's the pound. A little bit of worries when it comes to its inflation pressures. We'll see if that continues. I think this is kind of the spillover or continuation of what we saw the other day, a couple of days ago. It's rolling over. It's having a decent little bounce here, but it doesn't. This bounce is going to make me excited that, hey, it's going to turn around. I think it's just an oversold bounce. I'm going to leave it where we had it at a -2. A little bit of a push on the RSI. That's all I saw. But geez, look how below the 50 it is. It's just in a oversold bounce at this point. Moving over to the CAD, you'll see it's also pretty strong. I'm going to keep it at its +2. This is where we were yesterday. It had a little bit of a blip up and then a little correction, but it's still in this nice little high base area, ascending triangle pattern, looking pretty strong. I like it's above the 50. A little bit of a hiccup with the pullback there over that last hour candle or so, but it looks like it's going to stay comfortably above that 50. So I'm going to keep it at a +2, right next to where the US dollar is. Let's go to the Aussie. The Aussie showing a little bit more consolidation. We know it's weak, but it didn't really break down. So I'm going to keep it at that -1 that we had yesterday. The SAR still flipped. It looks like it's floating lower, but it looks a little reluctant to actually really just kind of fall down. And it's great. It is below the 50 here on that RSI, but it's kind of a tail. It's not really falling hard. So I'm going to see if that can't stabilize. But once again, folks, it's really not giving me much to go off. Let's take a look at the Kiwi. I correlate these two very similarly, but the Kiwi, it's in the same situation. I'm going to keep it. Actually, I put that from a -2 to a -1. And what I saw is it seems to be revisiting that moving average. This moving average is dropped, but it's not really falling. The SARS flipped, but it looks like it wants to find a stable area. And we saw this back here at the end of December. So if it could stay there and revisit it, it might be a little bit stronger than we think it is. Continuing forward, folks, let's take a look at the cryptos. The cryptos have been selling off. They had that real good surge towards the end of the year. They had their little peak here. And this is, I think, the third day. Here's the 6th, here's the 7th, here's the 8th, the 9th. So the 4th day of just kind of pulling back. They're actually approaching some pretty serious levels, at least when it comes to the volatility score. On the daily, it's probably not that intense, but I would expect some consolidation or a bounce on all of the cryptos. This is Bitcoin. Let's take a look at Bitcoin Cash. Very similar, maybe a little weaker. It's already kind of toyed with this area. This big drop, and it's flatlining here. These are major levels to break, but I imagine they're going to try to consolidate or bounce. I mean, this is a pretty decent sell-off over the last 3-4 days. Here is Ethereum, exactly the same situation. The only one that was a little different was Litecoin. Litecoin seems like it wants to stabilize a little bit early. It's still a negative trade to me. It's a -1. It's kind of outperforming what's going on, but you could see it's out of favor here. Even with the RSI climbing, it's below the 50. The SAR did flip, but kind of reluctantly. A big drop in that moving average. Yeah, they're just correcting. I still think they're in corrective action, and when they bounce hard. So even though I've got a couple of them at a -3, -2, -1, they're very difficult to continue in the direction of playing them in the bearish direction, because when they bounce so aggressively. So this is kind of where I sit. Not too much difference from what Ankit talked about yesterday. I might have moved one or two things a little weaker or a little stronger, but not a lot of change. I thought there'd be a little bit more change, but in light of the U.S. equities being closed, it didn't really do much. So let's take a look at some possible trades. Yes, folks, I've got a couple, but they're all paired with the U.S. dollar, and they're all going to be based on what happens with tomorrow's economic reports. So let's start with the first. I wanted to do euro pound. But let's go there first, because this is euro US. I want to do euro pound, but it looks like I might have already missed it. It looks like it's kind of pulling back, but I saw the euro US, right? Excuse me, I meant the dollar pound. So now I want to do the euro dollar, right? And what I'm seeing here is a little bit of a consolidation. If we can show a little bit more strength tomorrow with an economic report, or I should say, right, the employment reports, and the dollar gets a little bit strong and euro even stays flat, I could see this kind of roll over and maybe touch this support. So it's going to be a quick trade, not too big of a trade. I do like how this RSI is a little lower. Everything's looking good. So that's a possibility. However, there's a couple that I like a little bit better, and that's going to be a little bit more on the other ends of the spectrum. That's going to be the Aussie US. Now, I looked at the Kiwi US, but I like the Aussie US because it's a little bit closer to this floor. So this is going to be very similar. I want to see a report that favors the dollar strength and the dollar kind of make a move up, and this would be a nice breakdown. So we've got a very good floor here, right there, descending, but a nice little breakdown. We could catch some momentum and kind of just adjust our stops as it continues lower. So if you want to target this, go ahead and snap a Fibo somewhere. But if I see this confirm, I'm probably just going to kind of squeeze it and let it go a little bit, as far as it wants to go. The other trade I have is they're pretty close. I said the franc was strong and the dollar strong. So let's take a look at the two. I like the U.S. franc. If the franc can continue sideways or even weaken a little bit, and we do get a big surge in the U.S. dollar, I love this pattern. It's one of my favorites. It's a high base, ascending triangle, whatever you want to call it. But that might be a nice little pop-up to the upside. It's already showing some pretty good stability across here, and it has for a while. So the two, when you pair them together, it's always the U.S. It just seems to be beating it the whole way. So if we just get a little bit of a pop and a surge, it might be. So those are kind of the ones I'm looking at. But, hey, we've got economic reports on the U.S. coming out tomorrow, so that's going to be a big part of it. So those are just what's on my radar, possibly for tomorrow. So that's all I got, folks. In conclusion, U.S. markets were closed today. It was a quiet day for most part. I was expecting a little bit more. Maybe, hey, the U.S. equities are done, so let's go elsewhere. Nothing really moved outside of stuff that was already moving. The pound was weak, and it was showing a little bit more weakness. Saw a little bit more of a bounce there in the yen. So we got the CAD in the U.S. employment numbers out tomorrow, right? Non-farm payrolls for the U.S. Both have unemployment rates. So we should see a little bit of a movement in both of those currencies based on some of those numbers and results. Play relative strength and weakness is always proper position sizing. There are trades out there, folks. You just got to be patient. Pick your spots and follow along with your plan. Thanks for joining me, guys, and we'll talk to you next time. See you, folks.